The Georgia sun beat down mercilessly on Fort Benning's training grounds, turning the asphalt into a shimmering mirror of heat. It was 0600 hours on a Monday morning in July, and the air already felt thick enough to choke on. Sergeant Marcus Reeves stood with his arms crossed, aviator sunglasses hiding eyes that had seen 3 tours in Afghanistan, as he watched the new batch of recruits stumble off the bus like newborn calves learning to walk. Among them was Private Emma Carson, 22 years old, 5'6", with sandy blonde hair pulled back in a regulation bun so tight it made her scalp ache. She carried her duffel bag over one shoulder, her jaw set in determination, even as sweat already began trickling down her back beneath the standard issue PT uniform. She'd known this wouldn't be easy. She prepared herself mentally for the physical challenges, the sleep deprivation, the constant testing. What she hadn't fully prepared for was the immediate wall of hostility that seemed to materialize the moment her boots hit the ground. "Look at this one," came a voice from behind her, loud enough to be heard but quiet enough to maintain plausible deniability. "Bet she doesn't make it past week 1. Emma didn't turn around. She'd learned long ago that reacting only made things worse. Instead, she kept her eyes forward, following the painted yellow line toward the formation area where Sergeant Reeves was already barking orders. "Fall in. 2 lines. Move it like you've got a purpose." The recruits scrambled into something resembling formation. Emma found herself in the front row, which meant every mistake she made would be visible to everyone behind her. She stood at attention, eyes fixed on a point in the distance, trying to ignore the snickering that seemed to follow her like a shadow. Private Jake Morrison stood 3 people down from her, a corn-fed Iowa boy with shoulders like a linebacker and an attitude to match. He'd already decided Emma didn't belong here. Too small, too soft-looking, probably some rich kid trying to prove a point to daddy. He'd seen her type before. They usually washed out before the real training even began. "Listen up." Sergeant Reeves's voice cut through the morning air like a blade. "I don't care who you were before you got here. I don't care if you were homecoming queen or quarterback or valedictorian. Here, you are nothing. You are raw material, and it's my job to decide if you're worth molding into something useful. Most of you won't make it. Some of you will quit. Some of you will fail. And some of you," he paused, letting his gaze sweep across the formation, "will realize you never should have come in the first place." The morning began with a 5-mile run. Emma had always been a decent runner, but the Georgia heat was something else entirely. By mile 2, she could taste copper in her mouth. By mile 3, her legs felt like they were made of lead, but she kept moving, kept putting one foot in front of the other, even as several recruits fell back or dropped out entirely. Jake Morrison made sure to position himself near her during the run, his breathing steady and controlled while hers came in ragged gasps. "You good there, Carson?" he called out, his tone dripping with false concern. "Need me to carry you the rest of the way?" She didn't waste breath responding. Instead, she pushed harder, ignoring the burning in her lungs and the way her vision was starting to blur at the edges. When they finally crossed the finish line, she bent over with her hands on her knees, fighting the urge to vomit, while Morrison jogged in place like he'd just taken a casual stroll. The rest of the day was a blur of paperwork, equipment issue, and orientation briefings delivered by various officers who all seemed to share Sergeant Reeves's opinion that most of them were wasting everyone's time. By 1400 hours, Emma's head was pounding, her body ached, and she still had to face the barracks assignment. The women's barracks at Fort Benning were austere to the point of being brutal. Gray walls, metal bunk beds, footlockers that had seen decades of use. Emma was assigned a bottom bunk in the corner, which she quickly learned was both a blessing and a curse. A blessing because it gave her some small measure of privacy. A curse because it made her an easy target. Private Jessica Torres claimed the bunk above her, a Puerto Rican woman from the Bronx with sharp eyes and an even sharper tongue. She looked Emma up and down as she stowed her gear, her expression unreadable. "Where you from?" Jessica asked, her accent thick and musical. "Colorado," Emma replied quietly, arranging her belongings in her footlocker with military precision. "Colorado," Jessica repeated, as if testing the word. "Long way from home." "Yeah. You know what you're getting into here?" Emma paused, her hand stilling on a stack of carefully folded T-shirts. I know it's going to be hard. Jessica snorted. Hard. That's one word for it. She leaned over the edge of her bunk, her dark hair falling like a curtain. Word of advice, Colorado. Keep your head down, don't make waves, and whatever you do, don't give Morrison and his crew any ammunition. They're already circling you like sharks. Emma had noticed. Jake Morrison had gathered a small following. 3 other male recruits who seemed to feed off his energy like remora fish. They'd spent the afternoon shooting glances her way, whispering among themselves, occasionally laughing loud enough to make sure she heard. Why me? Emma asked, genuinely curious. There are plenty of other female recruits. Jessica shrugged. Maybe you look like an easy target. Maybe they're just assholes. Probably both. She disappeared back onto her bunk, and Emma heard the creak of springs as she settled in. Just watch yourself. That night, Emma lay in her bunk staring at the underside of Jessica's mattress, listening to the sounds of 30 women trying to adjust to their new reality. Some cried quietly into their pillows. Others snored immediately, exhausted beyond caring. Emma fell somewhere in between, too tired to sleep, too wired to truly rest. Her right hand unconsciously moved to her left bicep, fingers tracing a small tattoo that lived there, barely 2 inches across, easily hidden by a sleeve. It was a simple design, an eagle clutching a trident, anchor, and flintlock pistol. Most people wouldn't recognize it. Most people would assume it was just some generic military imagery. But it wasn't generic. It was specific, incredibly specific. Emma had gotten it on her 18th birthday, despite her mother's protests. It was a smaller version of the tattoo her father had worn on his shoulder for 25 years. The emblem of Marine Corps Special Operations Command, MARSOC, the Raiders. Her father had been one of the first, back when the unit was still finding its identity, still proving itself. Colonel James Reaper Carson. Even now, for years after his death, the name still carried weight in certain circles. Emma had grown up in his shadow, watching him disappear for months at a time, coming back harder and quieter each time. She'd seen the toll it took on her mother. The way Sarah Carson's smile became a little more forced with each deployment, each near miss, each funeral for one of James's teammates. When Emma had told her mother she was enlisting, Sarah had looked at her with eyes that held equal parts pride and devastation. "You don't have to do this," she'd said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You don't have to prove anything to anyone." But Emma did have to. Not to prove anything to anyone else. To prove it to herself. To understand what had driven her father. What had made him choose this life over and over again, even when it cost him everything. To see if she had whatever it was that made someone capable of that kind of sacrifice. She hadn't told anyone about her father. Not during the recruitment process. Not during MEPS. Not now. She'd listed her next of kin as her mother, using her mother's maiden name, Hughes. Carson was common enough that it shouldn't raise flags, and Emma had inherited her mother's blonde hair and blue eyes rather than her father's dark features. There was no reason for anyone to make the connection, and that was exactly how she wanted it. The next morning came brutally early. 0430 hours. Lights on, Sergeant Reeves banging on a metal trash, can lid like it was a gong. Up, up, up. You've got 15 minutes to be in formation. Move it. Emma rolled out her bunk, her muscles screaming in protest from yesterday's run. Around her, the other recruits stumbled to the morning routine. Quick wash, uniform, make the bunk, grab gear. She was ready with 2 minutes to spare, standing by her bunk at attention, while others still fumbled with bootlaces. The morning PT was worse than the day before. Push-ups until her arms gave out, sit-ups until her abs felt like they were tearing apart, flutter kicks that made her hip flexors burn like fire. And through it all, Morrison kept up a steady stream of commentary. "Come on, Carson. My grandmother could do better than that. Is that really your best? Pathetic. Maybe you should just quit now. Save us all the trouble." Sergeant Reeves heard it all and said nothing. In his mind, if Carson couldn't handle some verbal harassment from her fellow recruits, she definitely couldn't handle real combat stress. This was part of the filter, part of the process. The weak ones broke. The strong ones endured. Emma endured. Through the morning PT. through the classroom sessions on military law and customs, through the afternoon combatives training where Morrison accidentally hit her too hard during a grappling demonstration, leaving her gasping for air on the mat while he offered an insincere apology. By the end of the second day, Emma had accumulated a collection of bruises, a nickname she hated, Princess, courtesy of Morrison and his crew, and a burning determination not to give them the satisfaction of seeing her break. On the third day, during a break between training sessions, Emma sat alone on a bench near the obstacle course, drinking from her water bottle and trying to ignore the conversation happening 10 feet away. "I'm telling you, she's not going to last," Morrison was saying, his voice carrying easily across the open space. "Look at her. She's barely holding it together. Give it another week, maybe 2, and she'll be gone." "I don't know, man," one of his friends, Private Davis, responded. "She's tougher than she looks. She hasn't quit yet." Yet being the key word, Morrison laughed. "Trust me, I know her type. They come in all idealistic, thinking they're going to be G.I. Jane or whatever, and then reality hits them. She'll break. They always do." Emma's jaw clenched, but she kept her eyes forward, kept drinking her water. "Don't react. Don't give them anything. Hey, Princess." Morrison called out suddenly. "We're taking bets on when you tap out. You want to let us know so we can all win some money." She stood up, secured her water bottle to her belt, and walked away without a word. Behind her, she heard laughter and more comments, but she didn't turn around. She just kept walking. That night, Jessica Torres found her sitting outside the barracks, staring up at the stars. The Georgia sky was clear, and away from the base lights, you could actually see the Milky Way stretching across the darkness. "You okay?" Jessica asked, sitting down beside her without waiting for an invitation. "I'm fine," Emma said automatically. "Bullshit." Jessica pulled out a protein bar and tore it open. "Morrison's been riding you hard. Everyone's noticed. I can handle it. I'm sure you can, but you shouldn't have to." Jessica took a bite of her bar, chewing thoughtfully. "You know what I think? I think there's more to you than meets the eye, Colorado. I think you're here for a reason, and it's not just to prove you could do push-ups with the boys." Emma didn't respond, but something in her expression must have shifted because Jessica nodded to herself. "Yeah, that's what I thought. Well, whatever your reason is, don't let assholes like Morrison take it from you. They're not worth it." "Thanks," Emma said quietly. Jessica stood up, brushing dust from her pants. "Get some sleep? Tomorrow's the confidence course. You're going to need your energy." The confidence course. Emma had been dreading it. 30 feet of rope climbing, log balance beams, tire runs, cargo nets, and a final obstacle nicknamed the Weaver that had broken more than a few recruit spirits. She'd watched YouTube videos of it, studied the techniques. But watching and doing were two completely different things. The next morning, the entire platoon gathered at the course. Sergeant Reeves stood on a platform, megaphone in hand, explaining the rules. "You will complete this course as quickly as possible. You will not skip obstacles. You will not help each other. This is individual assessment. If you fall, you get up and try again. If you fail an obstacle 3 times, you're done for the day and you'll try again next week. Are there any questions?" There were no questions. "Good. Morrison, you're up first." Jake Morrison approached the starting line with the confidence of someone who'd been preparing for this his entire life. And in a way, he had high school football, wrestling, track. He was built for physical challenges. He attacked the course with aggressive efficiency, powering through each obstacle with minimal hesitation. His time, 8 minutes, 42 seconds. "Not bad, Morrison." Sergeant Reeves called out. "Set the bar high." "Next, Torres." Jessica was slower but steady, thinking through each obstacle before attempting it. 9 minutes, 18 seconds. "Carson, you're up." Emma's heart hammered in her chest as she approached the starting line. She could feel everyone's eyes on her, could practically hear Morrison's smug thoughts from where he stood with his arms crossed, watching her like a predator watches wounded prey. "Ready?" Sergeant Reeves asked. "Ready, Sergeant." "Go!" She exploded forward, hitting the tire run first. Her shorter legs meant more steps, more energy expenditure, but she pushed through, focusing on form over speed. The rope climb nearly defeated her. Her upper body strength was her weakest area, but she locked her legs around the rope, using her core and legs to help pull herself up. At the top, she slapped the platform and descended in controlled drops. The log beams tested her balance. The cargo net tested her grip strength. The wall tested everything. But she kept moving, kept pushing, even when her arms felt like noodles and her legs shook with exhaustion. The weaver was last, a series of horizontal logs set at different heights that you had to weave your body through, over, under, without touching the logs. One touch meant starting the obstacle over. Emma approached it carefully, studying the spacing. She went under the first log, her body scraping the dirt. Over the second, her tired muscles protesting. Under the third, and her foot caught, sending her sprawling. That's one. Sergeant Reeves called out. Reset. She scrambled back to the start of the weaver, her mind racing. Adjust the approach. Commit to the movements. Don't hesitate. Second attempt. She made it past the third log, then the fourth, fifth, sixth, and clipped the seventh with her shoulder. That's two. Last chance, Carson. Her chest heaved as she returned to start. One more failure, and she was done. She'd have to come back next week. Face Morrison's gloating. Endure another week of princess comments before she could try again. No, not happening. Third attempt. She cleared her mind, ignored the burning in every muscle, and moved. Under, over. Fluid. Committed. She touched the final post and rolled clear the obstacle. Clear. Time, 12 minutes, 6 seconds. She'd done it. Not fast, but she'd done it. As she walked back to the group, gasping for air, she caught Jessica's eye. The other woman gave her a small nod of respect. Morrison, on the other hand, just shook his head. 12 minutes, he muttered to Davis. Might as well have walked it. That afternoon, during barracks cleaning, Emma noticed something missing from her footlocker. Her phone, which they were allowed to keep but not use during training hours, was gone. So it was a small photo she'd kept of her mother, and a letter her mom had written her before she'd left for basic. Looking for something? She turned to find Morrison leaning against a bunk, that infuriating smirk on his face. Where is it? Emma asked quietly. Where's what? My phone. The photo. The letter. Morrison shrugged. No idea what you're talking about. Princess. Maybe you misplaced them. You seem pretty scattered. After all, can't even complete an obstacle course in under 10 minutes. Emma's hands clenched into fists at her sides. Every instinct screamed at her to wipe that smirk off his face, but she knew that was exactly what he wanted. One wrong move, and she'd be the one facing disciplinary action. Give them back, she said, her voice low despite the rage building inside her. Can't give back what I don't have. Morrison pushed off the bunk and walked past her, deliberately bumping her shoulder. Better file a report with Sergeant Reeves. I'm sure he'll get right on that. He wouldn't, and they both knew it. Sergeant Reeves had made it clear that recruits were expected to handle their own problems. Reporting theft would just make her look weak, make her more of a target. That night, Emma's phone mysteriously reappeared in her footlocker. Screen cracked, photos deleted. The letter and photo were never found. Jessica found her sitting on her bunk, staring at the damaged phone. Morrison? She asked. Emma nodded. That's crossing a line. It's fine. It's not fine, Emma. It was the first time Jessica had used her first name. That was personal property. You should report it. And say what? I have no proof. He'll deny it, and then it'll just get worse. Jessica sat down beside her, her expression troubled. This isn't sustainable. He's escalating. First the comments, then the physical stuff during training. Now this. What's next? Emma didn't have an answer. She just knew she couldn't quit. Not because of someone like Jake Morrison. Her father hadn't quit when things got hard. He'd pushed through, earned respect through action, become a legend. She would do the same, even if it killed her. The week continued its brutal rhythm. Wake at 0430, PT until 0700, breakfast, classroom instruction, lunch, practical training, dinner, equipment maintenance. Sleep at 2200. Repeat. By Friday, Emma felt like she'd aged 10 years. Her body was a roadmap of bruises. Her hands were callous and raw, and she'd lost 8 pounds she couldn't afford to lose. But she was still there, still standing, still pushing. Friday afternoon brought an unexpected announcement. Sergeant Reeves gathered the platoon after the final training session, his expression more serious than usual. Listen up. Monday morning, 0800 hours. We're having a special inspection. General Mitchell will be visiting from Fort Bragg. He'll be observing your performance and evaluating the training program. This means everything will be squared away. Barracks will be spotless. Uniforms will be perfect. You will be on your best behavior. Any questions? Silence. Good. Dismiss. As the platoon broke apart, Morrison caught Emma's eye and mouthed one word. Princess. She turned away, but inside, something shifted. General Mitchell. She knew that name. Her father had served under him during the early days of MARSOC. They'd been friends, as much as a colonel and a general could be friends. Mitchell had been at her father's funeral, had spoken at the service, had pulled Emma aside afterward and told her that if she ever needed anything at all, she should call him. She hadn't called, hadn't wanted special treatment or favors. But now he was coming here, and if he saw her, would he recognize her? It had been 4 years. She'd been 18 at the funeral, crying too hard to form coherent sentences. She looked different now. Harder, leaner, with shorter hair and a haunted look that came from a week of intensive training and constant harassment. Maybe he wouldn't notice her. Maybe she'd just be another face in the formation. Or maybe everything was about to change. The weekend passed in a blur of frantic cleaning and preparation. Every surface in the barracks was scrubbed until it gleamed. Every uniform was pressed and repressed until the creases could cut glass. Every boot was shined to mirror perfection. Sergeant Reeves prowled to the barracks like a predator, finding fault with things that seemed perfect to the naked eye. This footlocker is a 1/4 inch out of alignment. Fix it. I can see dust on this light fixture. Unacceptable. Your bunk has a wrinkle. Strip it down and start over. By Sunday night, Emma's hands smelled like Brasso and her back ached from being hunched over, cleaning things that were already clean. But the barracks looked like something out of a recruiting poster. Pristine, organized, military perfection. She lay in her bunk that night, unable to sleep despite her exhaustion. Tomorrow, General Mitchell would arrive. Tomorrow, there was a chance he might recognize her. And then what? Would he say something? Would he pull her aside? Would it change anything? Part of her hoped he wouldn't recognize her. She'd worked so hard to establish herself on her own merits, to separate herself from her father's legacy. If Mitchell acknowledged who she was, everything would change. The other recruits would know. Sergeant Reeves would know. Morrison would know. Another part of her, a smaller, more vulnerable part, wanted desperately to be recognized, to have someone see her and acknowledge not just who her father was, but who she was trying to become, to have someone look at her with respect instead of contempt or dismissal. Can't sleep either, huh? Jessica's voice came from the bunk above. Too much on my mind, Emma admitted quietly. The inspection? Yeah. Jessica was silent for a moment. You know, you've been different the last few days. Ever since Reeves announced Mitchell was coming. You know him or something? Emma's breath caught. What makes you say that? Just a feeling. You got real quiet when Reeves said the name. Jessica shifted above her, springs creaking. Look, I don't know what your deal is, Colorado, and I'm not asking you to tell me. But whatever it is, I've got your back. Just so you know. Thanks, Jess. Get some sleep? Tomorrow's going to be intense. Monday morning arrived with typical Georgia humidity, the kind that made your uniform stick to your skin before you even finished putting it on. The platoon assembled in formation at 0730, a full 30 minutes before the scheduled inspection. Sergeant Reeves walked the line, examining each recruit with microscopic attention. He stopped in front of Emma, his eyes scanning her from head to toe. She stood at perfect attention, eyes forward, breathing steady. Her uniform was immaculate, Her boots reflected the morning sun. Even her hair was perfect. Every strand in place, bun positioned exactly according to regulations. Reeves leaned in close. "You're looking sharp today, Carson. Don't screw it up." "Yes, Sergeant." He moved on, continuing his inspection. Emma let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. At 0800 hours exactly, a black SUV pulled up to the training area. The door opened, and General Marcus Mitchell stepped out. He was in his late 50s, with iron gray hair cut military short, and a bearing that spoke of decades of command. 3 stars gleamed on his uniform collar. His face was weathered, lined with the weight of decisions that had sent men into harm's way, but his eyes were sharp and alert, missing nothing. Behind him came 2 aides and a Captain Emma didn't recognize. They formed a small entourage that followed Mitchell as he approached where Sergeant Reeves stood at attention. "Good morning, Sergeant Reeves," Mitchell said, his voice carrying the kind of authority that didn't need to be loud. "Good morning, General. Welcome to Fort Benning, sir." "At ease, Sergeant. Let's take a look at your recruits." Reeves turned to the formation. Platoon attend tie-in. 40 recruits snapped to attention in perfect unison. It was perhaps the first thing they'd all managed to do in perfect sync since arriving at Fort Benning. General Mitchell began walking the line, his experienced eyes taking in every detail. He stopped occasionally to ask questions: where a recruit was from, why they'd enlisted, what they hoped to achieve. The recruits answered crisply, clearly relieved that his demeanor was far less intimidating than Sergeant Reeves's constant intensity. Emma stood in the second row, positioned between Jessica and a recruit named Williams. Her heart hammered against her ribs as Mitchell made his way down the first line, then turned to begin the second. He was 5 people away. 4, 3. He stopped in front of Morrison. "Name?" "Private Jake Morrison, sir." "Where are you from, Morrison?" "Iowa, sir. Small town called Denison. Good farming country." "What brought you to the Army?" "Family tradition, sir. My grandfather served in Vietnam, my father in Desert Storm. I wanted to continue the legacy, sir." Mitchell nodded approvingly. "Fine motivation. Carry on, Private." "Thank you, sir." He moved to the next recruit, then the next, and then he was standing directly in front of Emma. Their eyes met. For a moment, nothing happened. Mitchell looked at her the same way he'd looked at all the others. Professional assessment, general interest. He opened his mouth to ask the standard questions, and then his gaze dropped slightly, catching on her left arm. Emma was wearing the standard PT uniform, short sleeves, army gray. The tattoo on her left bicep was partially visible, the eagle's wing peeking out from beneath the sleeve hem. Mitchell's expression didn't change dramatically. He was too experienced, too controlled for that. But Emma saw it. The slight widening of his eyes, the imperceptible shift in his posture, the way his jaw tightened almost invisibly. He knew. "Private," he said slowly, his voice neutral. "May I see your arm?" Around them, the formation seemed to hold its collective breath. Sergeant Reeves stepped forward slightly, clearly confused by the unusual request. "Sir," Emma asked, her voice steady despite the chaos in her mind. "Your left arm. Roll up your sleeve, please." Emma's hands moved automatically, rolling the sleeve up to reveal the full tattoo. The eagle, the trident, the anchor, the flintlock pistol. The MARSOC emblem in perfect detail. Mitchell stared at it for what felt like an eternity, but was probably only 5 seconds. When he looked back up at her face, there was something in his eyes. Recognition, yes, but also something else. Surprise, respect, and underneath it all, a flash of pain, probably remembering the funeral where he'd last seen this young woman. "What's your name, Private?" he asked quietly. "Private Emma Carson, sir." The name hung in the air like a thunderclap. Emma saw Sergeant Reeves's head snap toward her, saw the confusion on his face as his mind worked through the implications. Around her, she could feel the other recruits stirring, sensing that something significant was happening even if they didn't understand what. Mitchell's throat worked as he swallowed. "Carson," he repeated softly. "James Carson's daughter." It wasn't a question. "Yes, sir." The general took a step back, his eyes never leaving her face. Does your mother know you're here? Yes, sir. She wasn't happy about it, but she knows. I imagine she wasn't. Mitchell glanced at Sergeant Reeves. Sergeant, a word, please. In private. Sir, yes, sir. Reeves turned to the formation. Platoon, stand at ease. Do not break formation. He followed Mitchell about 20 yards away, far enough that their conversation couldn't be overheard, but close enough that the platoon could see the increasingly animated gestures from Reeves, the general's calm but firm responses, and the moment when Reeves's face went from confused to shocked to something that might have been apprehensive. Emma stood at ease, feeling 40 pairs of eyes boring into her back. She didn't turn around, didn't acknowledge the whispers that had started despite the order for silence. Jessica leaned slightly toward her. Colorado. What the hell just happened? Emma kept her eyes forward. Complicated. No shit, it's complicated. That's a general, Emma. A 3-star general. And he knows you. Behind them, Emma heard Morrison's voice, low and angry. What kind of connections does Princess have? Who pulls strings to get a general's attention? Quiet in the ranks, came a sharp voice from one of the other drill instructors who'd been observing the inspection. The conversation between Mitchell and Reeves concluded. They walked back toward the formation, and Emma could see that Reeves's entire demeanor had changed. His usual aggressive confidence had been replaced by something more cautious, more uncertain. Platoon, attend tie-in. Reeves called out. They snapped back to attention. General Mitchell stepped forward, his hands clasped behind his back. I'm going to tell you all something that I think you should know. Private Carson here, he gestured toward Emma, is the daughter of Colonel James Carson. Some of you may not recognize that name. Those of you who've studied military history, particularly special operations history, will know it well. Emma felt her stomach drop. She'd wanted anonymity, wanted to earn respect on her own merits, and now Mitchell was about to strip all of that away. Colonel Carson was one of the founding members of MARSOC, Marine Corps Special Operations Command. He served for 25 years, completing 9 combat deployments across 3 different theaters. He was awarded 2 Silver Stars, 4 Bronze Stars, and a Purple Heart. He trained some of the finest operators in American military history. And 4 years ago, he died during a training accident while preparing for his 10th deployment. The silence was absolute. Even the birds seemed to have stopped singing. Private Carson could have leveraged her father's name and reputation to secure an easier path. She could have sought officer candidate school, special programs, any number of advantages that would have been freely given in honor of her father's service. Instead, Mitchell's eyes moved back to Emma. She enlisted as a private, using her mother's maiden name, and asked for no special treatment whatsoever. She wanted to prove herself on her own merits. Emma's throat tightened. She hadn't expected this. Hadn't expected him to publicly acknowledge not just who her father was, but what she'd been trying to do. That kind of integrity, Mitchell continued, that kind of determination to forge your own path rather than ride on someone else's coattails. That's exactly the kind of character we need in our military. Private Carson, you honor your father's memory not by using his name, but by following his example of service and dedication. He turned back to address the full platoon. Let me be clear to all of you. Private Carson will receive no special treatment from this point forward. She will complete the same training, meet the same standards, face the same challenges as every one of you. Her father's legacy doesn't exempt her from anything, but it should serve as a reminder to all of you about why you're here and what you're working toward. Mitchell looked directly at Morrison, and Emma saw the private physically recoil slightly under that penetrating gaze. I expect every member of this platoon to treat each other with respect and professionalism. The kind of unit cohesion that saves lives in combat starts here. In training, harassment, hazing, and divisiveness have no place in the United States Army. Is that understood? Yes, SIR. The platoon responded in unison. Outstanding. Sergeant Reeves, carry on. Yes, sir. Reeves saluted sharply. Platoon dismissed. Carson, Torres, Morrison, Williams, you're with me. The rest of you, 15-minute break. Then we're running the obstacle course. The formation broke apart, but Emma could feel the weight of every stare, hear the whispered conversations that erupted the moment people were far enough away. She followed Sergeant Reeves to a shaded area near the administration building, along with Jessica, Morrison, and Williams, a quiet recruit from Tennessee who seemed as confused as everyone else about why he'd been singled out. General Mitchell was waiting there, having dismissed his aides. He stood with his arms crossed, and when Emma approached, his expression softened slightly. "Private Carson," he said formally, then seemed to catch himself. "Emma, I apologize if I overstepped. I know you wanted to keep your background private." "It's okay, sir," Emma said, though she wasn't sure it was. "I understand. Your father was one of the finest men I ever had the privilege of serving with. I meant every word I said out there." Mitchell glanced at Sergeant Reeves. "Sergeant, I need you to understand something. This young woman is not to receive special treatment, positive or negative, because of who her father was. She sinks or swims on her own abilities. Are we clear?" "Crystal clear, sir," Reeves responded, and Emma detected a new note of respect in his voice that hadn't been there before. "Good." Mitchell turned to Morrison. "Private Morrison, I'm going to speak plainly. I've been watching this platoon for the last hour. I've seen the dynamics, heard the whispers. You've been targeting Private Carson since she arrived. That ends now. Do I make myself clear?" Morrison's face had gone pale. "Sir, I make myself clear." "Yes, sir. Crystal clear, sir." "Outstanding. If I hear that you or anyone else is continuing to harass any member of this platoon, you'll find yourself doing remedial training until you can't remember your own name. And I assure you I will hear about it. Sergeant Reeves has my direct contact information." Morrison swallowed hard. "Understood, sir. You're dismissed." Morrison practically fled, and Williams, who apparently had been included just to witness the conversation, followed quickly behind. That left Emma, Jessica, Sergeant Reeves, and the general. "Private Torres," Mitchell said, turning to Jessica, "Emma is going to need a friend in the coming weeks. From what I observed, you've been that friend. Keep it up." Jessica straightened. "Yes, sir. Always, sir." "Good. You're dismissed." Jessica squeezed Emma's shoulder quickly before heading back toward the barracks, leaving Emma alone with Reeves and Mitchell. "Sir," Emma said carefully, "I really didn't want special attention. I just wanted to train like everyone else." "I know that," Mitchell replied. "And you will. But, Emma, you need to understand something. Your father's reputation. It matters. Whether you wanted it to or not, it matters. There are people in this army, hell, in all the armed forces, who would run through fire for James Carson's daughter, not because they think you need help, but because they respected him that much. That's exactly what I was trying to avoid, sir. I understand, but you can't completely escape your father's shadow, Emma. None of us can escape where we come from. The question is whether we let it define us or whether we use it to become something more." He paused, his expression thoughtful. "Your father never wanted special treatment either. Did you know that? When he was promoted to colonel, he fought to stay in the field rather than take a desk job. He could have coasted on his reputation for the last 5 years of his career. Instead, he kept pushing himself, kept leading from the front." Emma felt tears prickling at her eyes, but refused to let them fall. "I miss him." "We all do." Mitchell's voice softened further. "He'd be proud of you, not just for enlisting, but for how you're handling yourself. Courage isn't just about facing enemy fire, Emma. Sometimes it's about facing your peers, facing harassment and judgment, and not letting it break you." Sergeant Reeves cleared his throat. "Sir, if I may, I owe Private Carson an apology. I didn't recognize the signs of serious harassment. I should have intervened sooner." Emma turned to him, surprised. "Sergeant." "No." Reeves cut her off. "I thought I was letting you prove yourself. I thought I was giving you the same treatment as everyone else. But there's a difference between tough training and creating an environment where one soldier is singled out for abuse. I was wrong." It was perhaps the first time Emma had heard Sergeant Reeves admit he was wrong about anything. Mitchell nodded approvingly. "That takes integrity, Sergeant. Make sure it doesn't happen again." "It won't, sir. You have my word." The general checked his watch. "I need to get back to Bragg." "Emma," He caught himself again. Private Carson, keep your head up. You're going to face more challenges because of today. Some people will resent that I identified who you are. Others will expect more from you because of your father's legacy. Don't let either group dictate your path. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Mitchell extended his hand, and Emma shook it. His grip was firm, the handshake of a warrior who'd seen and done things most people couldn't imagine. If you need anything at all, you have my contact information through your mother. Don't hesitate to reach out. I won't, sir. He turned to leave, then paused and looked back. Your father used to say something when things got tough. He'd say, "The only easy day was yesterday. Remember that." I will, sir. Mitchell walked back to his SUV, and Emma watched as it drove away, taking with it any hope she'd had of continuing her training in anonymity. Sergeant Reeves stood beside her in silence for a moment. Finally, he said, "You know this changes everything." I know. Some recruits are going to treat you differently. Some will resent you. Some will put you on a pedestal. I know that too, Sergeant. And Morrison, he's not going to take this well. Getting dressed down by a general in front of his peers. He'll be angry. Emma finally looked at Reeves directly. Sergeant, with all due respect, Morrison has been angry at me since the moment I arrived. At least now maybe he'll keep it to himself. A slight smile cracked Reeves's usual stern expression. Fair point, Private. Fair point. He checked his own watch. Break's over in 5 minutes. Get some water. Square yourself away, and meet me at the obstacle course. You're running it again today. Yes, Sergeant. As Emma walked back toward the barracks, she could feel the eyes following her. The whispers were louder now, less concealed. She caught fragments of conversation. Carson's daughter. Marsoc, that's insane. Explains it to two. Think Morrison's going to... She found Jessica waiting near the water station, 2 fill bottles in hand. She passed one to Emma, without a word. Thanks, Emma said quietly. That was intense, Jessica observed. Your dad was really someone important, huh? He was to me. That's not what I meant. I mean, the general knew him personally. The way he talked about him. That's serious respect, Emma. My dad was complicated. He was a great soldier. The best. But being the best at that sometimes meant not being the best at other things. Like being home for birthdays. Or anniversaries. Or just being there. Jessica nodded slowly. Military family problems. My uncle was Navy. Gone 10 months out of the year. My aunt raised 4 kids basically by herself. It's hard. Yeah, it is. They drank their water in companionable silence. Around them, the rest of the platoon was gradually reconvening, heading toward the obstacle course. Emma noticed that the usual clusters had shifted slightly. Morrison was standing alone, his friends seeming to keep a careful distance. Others were glancing at Emma with expressions ranging from curiosity to respect to jealousy. Everything had changed. Hey, Jessica said suddenly. Whatever happens next, whatever people say or do, remember why you came here. Don't let them take that from you. I won't. Good. Now come on, Colorado. Let's go show them what you're made of. They headed toward the obstacle course together, and Emma felt something shift inside her. The secret was out. Her father's legacy was no longer something she could hide from. But maybe, just maybe, that wasn't entirely a bad thing. Colonel James Carson had faced impossible odds and come out victorious. He'd built a reputation through action, not words. He'd led from front and inspired loyalty through example. Emma could do the same. She would do the same. At the obstacle course, Sergeant Reeves was already addressing the platoon. Today we're running the course again. This time, we're running it in pairs. You'll be linked together with a buddy cord. If one person fails, both fail. This is about learning to work as a team. He began calling out pairs. Emma waited, wondering who she'd be matched with. Please, not Morrison, she thought. That would be a disaster. Carson, you're with Torres. Relief flooded through her. Jessica grinned and jogged over. Guess we're stuck together. Colorado. Could be worse. Could be better too, but hey, we'll make it work. Morrison, Sergeant Reeves called out, "You're with Davis." Emma watched as Morrison and Davis were linked together with a buddy cord, a 6-foot length of rope that connected them at the waist. His face was a mask of barely controlled anger, and when his eyes met Emma's across the formation, there was pure hatred there. The general's warning hadn't changed Morrison's feelings. If anything, it had made them worse. He'd been humiliated in front of everyone, called out by a 3-star general, all because of Princess Carson. Emma looked away. She couldn't control Morrison's feelings. She could only control her own actions and reactions. "All right," Sergeant Reeves shouted. "First pair, you're up. The rest of you, watch and learn." As the afternoon progressed and pairs tackled the course with varying degrees of success, Emma felt the weight of her father's legacy settling onto her shoulders like a heavy pack. She couldn't remove it, couldn't set it down, couldn't pretend it didn't exist. All she could do was carry it forward, one obstacle at a time. The next 2 weeks were a study in contrasts. On one side, Emma found herself experiencing a level of respect from some quarters that she'd never had before. Certain drill instructors began giving her actual feedback, rather than just criticism. A few recruits who previously ignored her started asking her questions about technique or approach. Even Sergeant Reeves seemed to have shifted from viewing her as a potential washout to seeing her as a genuine trainee worth investing in. On the other side, the resentment was palpable. Morrison had become a pressure cooker of barely contained rage. He followed every rule to the letter now, gave Emma a wide berth during training exercises, and never spoke directly to her if he could avoid it. But his eyes told a different story. Every time she succeeded at something, every time an instructor praised her improvement, every time another recruit showed her respect, Emma could feel Morrison's hatred intensifying. It was a Tuesday morning, 13 days after General Mitchell's visit, when things finally came to a head. The platoon was in the middle of combat training, hand-to-hand fighting techniques, grappling, defense against armed opponents. They'd been paired off for sparring, with strict instructions to pull punches and maintain control. This wasn't about hurting each other. It was about learning proper form and technique. Emma was paired with a recruit named Stevens, a laid-back guy from California who treated the whole exercise like a dance. They moved to the techniques methodically, taking turns playing aggressor and defender, neither one trying to prove anything. Across the mat, Morrison was paired with Williams, and Morrison was not pulling his punches. "Morrison," Sergeant Reeves barked, "control yourself. This is about technique, not power." "Yes, Sergeant," Morrison responded. But Emma could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his jaw clenched with every movement. The session ended without major incident, but Emma noticed Williams limping slightly as they headed to the next training block. She caught up with him near the classroom building. "You okay?" she asked quietly. Williams glanced around nervously, as if worried about being seen talking to her. "I'm fine." "Williams." "I said I'm fine, Carson." He walked faster, putting distance between them. Emma stopped, watching him go. Jessica peered at her elbow. "Morrison's getting worse," Jessica observed. "He's like a bomb waiting to go off." "I know, but what am I supposed to do? Report him for being angry? For giving me dirty looks? Maybe talk to Sergeant Reeves? And say what? That I'm scared of another recruit? That plays right into every stereotype Morrison already believes about me." Jessica frowned. "Pride's gonna get you hurt, Colorado. Maybe, but giving in to fear would definitely break me." That night, Emma lay in her bunk staring at the darkness, unable to shake the feeling that something bad was coming. It was like standing on a frozen lake and hearing the ice crack beneath your feet. You knew something was about to give, but you didn't know when or how bad it would be. The answer came 3 days later. It was a Friday, which meant the week's final PT test, a 2-mile run in under 16 minutes. It was hot, oppressively humid, the kind of Georgia summer day where the air felt like soup and every breath was an effort. The platoon lined up at the starting line, 40 recruits ready to prove themselves one more time before the weekend. Emma took her usual position in the middle of the pack, neither at the front nor the back. She'd learned to pace herself, to conserve energy for the final sprint rather than burning out early. "Ready," Sergeant Reeves called out. Set. Go. They exploded forward. 40 pairs of boots pounding the asphalt track. Emma settled into her rhythm quickly, her breathing steady, her stride efficient. She'd improved significantly over the past 3 weeks. Her 2-mile time had dropped from 17 minutes to just over 15 minutes. She was getting stronger, faster, more confident. The first mile passed in a blur of heat and effort. Emma stayed with the main pack, surrounded by other recruits. Morrison was ahead, as usual, running with his friends. Jessica was slightly behind Emma, maintaining a steady pace. As they rounded the turn to begin the second mile, Emma noticed something odd. Morrison, who typically stayed at the front of the pack, had dropped back. He was now running just a few feet ahead of her, matching her pace exactly. Her instincts prickled. This wasn't right. They hit the straightaway, and Morrison drifted wider on the track, positioning himself in the lane to Emma's right. His friend Davis did the same on her left. She was boxing between them, with nowhere to go. Morrison, she started to say. Shut up and run, princess, he snarled, just loud enough for her to hear over the pounding of feet and heavy breathing. Emma tried to speed up, to break free of the box they created, but Morrison and Davis matched her pace. They were corralling her, herding her towards something. And then she saw it, a section of track where the edge had crumbled slightly, creating a small but significant drop-off into grass. If someone wasn't paying attention, if someone was forced off a track at that point, they could easily turn an ankle or worse. Morrison was steering her directly toward it. Emma's mind raced. She could call out, try to get Sergeant Reeves' attention, but he was ahead of the pack, monitoring the front runners. She could stop running entirely, but that would mean failing the PT test. She could try to break through the box, but that would mean physical contact, which could be interpreted as aggression. Or she could trust her training and handle it herself. The drop-off was 20 feet away. 15. 10. At the last second, Emma made her move. Instead of trying to break forward or to either side, she suddenly slowed down, letting Morrison and Davis surge ahead. They overshot her position by several feet, and by the time they realized what she'd done, she'd already cut to the inside lane, clear of danger. Morrison's face contorted with rage as she passed him on the inside. You bitch. Problem, Morrison? Sergeant Reeves's voice cut through the air like a whip. He dropped back through the pack and was now running alongside them, his eyes locked on Morrison. You got something to say? Morrison's mouth snapped shut. No, Sergeant. Then focus on your own run and stop worrying about Carson. Yes, Sergeant. Emma pushed forward, putting distance between herself and Morrison's group. Her heart was pounding for more than just exertion. She'd been seconds away from potentially serious injury, and Morrison had orchestrated it deliberately. She finished the 2 miles in 14 minutes and 52 seconds, her personal best. But the achievement felt hollow as she bent over at the finish line, hands on her knees, trying to process what had just happened. Jessica finished a minute later and immediately came to Emma's side. What was that about? I saw Morrison and Davis box you in. They were trying to force me off the track, Emma said quietly, into that drop-off on the east side. Jessica's eyes widened. That could have really hurt you. I know. You need to report this, Emma. This wasn't just harassment. This was an actual attempt to injure you. With what proof? My word against theirs? They just say I'm making it up, trying to get them in trouble. Sergeant Reeves saw something. He called Morrison out. He saw Morrison talking to me. That's all. Not enough. Jessica looked like she wanted to argue further. But Morrison was approaching with Davis and another recruit named Parker. Their PT shirts were soaked with sweat, their faces flushed from the run, but Morrison's expression was cold and calculating. Nice time, princess, he said, his voice dripping with false congratulations. Must be nice having a general in your back pocket. Does he give you tips? Special training? Maybe some performance enhancers. Walk away, Morrison, Jessica said firmly. I'm talking to Carson, not you, Torres. And I'm telling you to walk away. Morrison took a step closer. You know what I think? I think Princess here has been getting special treatment all along. I think her phone called Daddy's old friends before she even got here. Set the whole thing up. Poor little Emma needs protection from the big bad army. Pathetic. Emma straightened up, meeting Morrison's eyes directly. My father died 4 years ago. I can't call him. And I didn't call General Mitchell. He happened to be conducting an inspection. That's it. Convenient. The truth usually is. Morrison's hands clenched into fists. You think you're so special because your dad was some hotshot operator? You think that makes you one of us? You're nothing but a... Morrison. Sergeant Reeves's voice cracked across the track like thunder. He strode toward them, his face dark with anger. My office. Now. Sergeant, I don't want to hear it. Move. Morrison shot Emma one final look of pure hatred before stalking off toward the administration building. Reeves followed, leaving the rest of the platoon to cool down and hydrate. Emma grabbed a water bottle with shaking hands. The adrenaline from a near accident in the confrontation was making her feel lightheaded and slightly nauseous. He's losing it, Jessica said quietly. Morrison is genuinely losing his mind over this. I know. It's not safe, Emma. He tried to hurt you during that run. What's next? Is he going to sabotage your equipment? Ambush you somewhere? I don't know. Then we need to do something. Talk to someone. Get him removed from training. Emma shook her head. If I do that, it proves him right. Proves I can't handle the army without special protection. I might as well just quit. That's pride talking. Maybe, but it's also truth. Jess, my father built his entire career on being tougher, more capable, more dedicated than anyone else. He never asked for help, never showed weakness, never quit. Your father also had a team, Jessica pointed out. MARSOC operators don't work alone. They rely on each other. That's not weakness, that's smart. Before Emma could respond, Sergeant Reeves emerged from the administration building, Morrison trailing behind him. Even from a distance, Emma could see that Morrison had been thoroughly chewed out. His posture was stiff, his face was pale, and he wouldn't meet anyone's eyes. Reeves addressed the entire platoon. Listen up. We've got a problem with unit cohesion. Some of you seem to think this is high school, where you can have your little cliques and feuds, and nobody gets hurt. Let me make something very clear. This is not high school. This is the United States Army. In 6 months, some of you will be deployed to actual war zones. Your ability to work together, to trust each other, to put aside personal feelings for good of the mission, that could mean the difference between life and death. He paused, letting that sink in. Starting Monday, we're implementing a new training protocol. Buddy teams. You'll be assigned a partner, and everything you do for the next 2 weeks will be done with that partner. You eat together, train together, clean together. You will learn to function as a unit, or you will fail as a unit. Clear? Yes, Sergeant, the platoon responded. Outstanding. Buddy team assignments will be posted tomorrow morning. Dismissed. As the platoon dispersed, Emma felt a sense of dread settling in her stomach. Buddy teams. Random assignments. Which meant there was a chance, a very real chance, that she could end up partner with Morrison. That night, Emma barely slept. She lay in her bunk, listening to the sound of the barracks, her mind running through worst-case scenarios. If she was paired with Morrison for 2 weeks, he'd have constant access to her, constant opportunities to sabotage her performance, to make her look bad, to maybe even cause the kind of accident he'd try to orchestrate during the run. Stop thinking so loud. Jessica's voice drifted down from the top bunk. I can hear your brain grinding from up here. Sorry, you're worried about the buddy teams. Wouldn't you be? Jessica was quiet for a moment. Yeah, I would be. But Emma, you've got to have faith that Sergeant Reeves knows what he's doing. After today, after whatever he said to Morrison in that office, you really think he'd pair you two together? I hope not. But if he's trying to force unit cohesion, pairing up people who hate each other might be exactly his strategy. That would be insane. This is the Army. Insane is kind of their specialty. Jessica actually laughed at that. Fair point. Get some sleep, Colorado. Tomorrow will come whether you're ready or not. Saturday morning arrived with its usual brutal efficiency. Emma dragged herself out of bed. went through the morning routine on autopilot, and joined the mass of recruits gathered around the bulletin board where Sergeant Reeves had posted the buddy team assignments. She pushed through the crowd, scanning the list for her name. Carson, Emma, Buddy, Torres, Jessica. Relief hit her so hard she'd actually felt dizzy. Jessica, she was partnered with Jessica. Not Morrison, not Davis, not any of Morrison's crew. Jessica appeared beside her, grinning. Looks like you're stuck with me, Colorado. I can live with that. They looked for Morrison's name on the list. Morrison, Jake, Buddy, Chun, David. Chun was a quiet recruit from San Francisco who kept himself and seemed to have zero interest in drama. Not a friend of Morrison's, but not an enemy either. A neutral assignment. Interesting, Jessica observed. Reeves is splitting up Morrison's crew. Davis is with Henderson. Parker is with Novak. He's breaking up all the cliques. Emma scanned the rest of the list and saw that Jessica was right. Every established friendship group had been deliberately separated. Reeves was forcing them to work with people they didn't know well, building new connections, breaking down old assumptions. It was actually brilliant. The next 2 weeks were intense in a completely different way than before. Emma and Jessica became a true team, learning each other's strengths and weaknesses, covering for each other, pushing each other to improve. Jessica was stronger in upper body exercises, so she helped Emma with pull-ups and rope climbs. Emma had better endurance, so she paced Jessica during long runs. They learned to move together, communicate with minimal words, anticipate each other's needs. And across the training grounds, Emma watched Morrison struggle with his new partner. Chin was competent but unmotivated, doing the bare minimum to pass. Morrison, used to working with people who fed off his competitive energy, found himself constantly frustrated. More than once, Emma saw them arguing, saw Morrison gesticulating angrily while Chin just shrugged and walked away. The buddy team system was breaking Morrison down, but it was building Emma up. By the end of the first week, Emma and Jessica had the second best performance scores in the platoon. By the end of the second week, they were first. Sergeant Reeves noticed. Carson, Torres, front and center. They jogged over to where he stood with a clipboard, checking off scores. Yes, Sergeant. You two have the highest combined scores in the platoon. Clean sweep, PT, marksmanship, tactical exercises, even your dam barracks inspection. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. Yes, Sergeant. They responded in unison. Carson, a word. Jessica glanced at Emma, then stepped away to give them privacy. Sergeant Reeves waited until she was out of earshot. You've come a long way, he said, his tone less harsh than usual. When you first got here, I had my doubts. Thought you might be another wannabe who'd wash out in week 1. I remember, Sergeant. I was wrong. You got grit, Carson. Real determination. And you've built good unit cohesion with Torres. That's important. Thank you, Sergeant. Don't thank me yet. I'm about to make your life harder. He paused. Next week, we're doing field training exercises. 3 days in the woods, survival skills, navigation, tactical movement. It's the final major test before you move on to advanced individual training. You'll be in 4-person fire teams. Emma's stomach clenched. 4-person teams. That's right. You, Torres, Morrison, and Chun. There it was. The trap she'd been dreading. Sergeant, is that really... It's necessary. Reeves cut her off. Morrison needs to learn to work with you, and you need to learn to work with him. In combat, you don't get to choose your team based on who you like. You work with who you've got. I understand, Sergeant, but Morrison has actively tried to hurt me. During the PT test 2 weeks ago. I know. I saw it. I dealt with it. Reeves's expression was hard but not unsympathetic. Morrison's been in my office 4 times in the last 3 weeks, Carson. I've made it very clear that any further incidents will result in him being recycled to a different training platoon. He knows he's on thin ice. And you think putting us together in an isolated training exercise is going to help? I think it's going to force you both to grow up. You're both letting this personal conflict interfere with your development as soldiers. This field exercise will settle it one way or another. Emma wanted to argue further, but she knew it was pointless. Sergeant Reeves had made his decision. "Yes, Sergeant. You're dismissed." Emma walked back to where Jessica was waiting, her expression carefully neutral. "Let me guess," Jessica said. "Field exercise. 4-person teams. You, me, Morrison, and Chun." "How'd you know?" "Because Reeves has that look, like a parent forcing siblings to work out their differences. He's playing therapist with assault rifles." Emma couldn't help but smile slightly at the image. This is going to be a disaster. Maybe Morrison will surprise you. 2 weeks with Chun might have mellowed him out. They both looked across the training yard where Morrison was currently berating Chun for something, his face red with anger. Chun just stood there, looking bored. Or maybe not, Jessica amended. That night, Emma pulled out the one photograph she had of her father, a candid shot someone had taken during a training exercise. He was in full gear, face paint streaked across his features. But he was smiling. Actually smiling, which was rare in photos. Someone had probably just told a joke. He looked young in the picture, maybe 30 years before the way to command and repeated deployments had aged him. Emma ran her finger across the photo's edge, worn soft from years of handling. "What would you do?" she whispered to the image. "How would you handle Morrison?" Her father stared back, frozen in that moment of levity, offering no answers. But Emma thought she knew anyway. Colonel James Carson wouldn't have complained, wouldn't have asked for a different team assignment. He would have gritted his teeth, done his job, and proven through actions that he belonged. He would have shown Morrison what real strength looked like. Not the strength of anger and intimidation, but the strength of discipline and competence. That's what Emma would do, too. 3 days later, at 0500 hours on a Monday morning, 4 recruits loaded their packs and prepared to spend 72 hours in the Georgia wilderness learning whether they could function as a team. Emma Carson, Jessica Torres, David Chun, and Jake Morrison. One of them wasn't coming back the same person. The Georgia wilderness stretched endlessly. Pine forest, narrow streams, oppressive summer heat. Emma adjusted her 45-pound pack as Team Delta assembled at the drop-off point. Her shoulders already ached. Sergeant Reeves addressed the teams. 72 hours on your own. Navigate using map and compass. Establish patrol bases. Complete tactical exercises. Reach extraction points. Team performance counts more than individual. If one fails, all fail. Morrison took point automatically, positioning himself far from Emma. Chun and Jessica filled the middle. They hiked in silence, the forest alive with morning sounds. At the 2-mile mark, Morrison opened their coordinates. 12 miles northeast. Rough terrain. His tone was cold when he assigned Emma to navigation. During lunch, Chin asked about Emma's father. Morrison's hostility erupted. "You don't belong here. You're weak, slow, only passing because instructors fear bad PR." Emma met his eyes steadily. "If that were true, I wouldn't have the highest scores in the platoon. With Torres..." "Because Torres is carrying you," Morrison sneered. "I'm not carrying anyone," Jessica said flatly. They reached the swollen river. Morrison insisted on crossing at the widest point. Emma argued for scouting upstream. Jessica brokered a compromise. 15 minutes to search. Chin found a fallen tree, creating a natural bridge. Emma suggested belaying across with rope. "I worked at a climbing gym. I know proper technique." Morrison's face showed his hatred of being tied to Emma. "If you fall, I'm cutting the rope. If I fall, you'll pull me up." That's what teammates do. Chun and Jessica crossed successfully. Then Emma and Morrison began. 3/4 across, Emma's boot hit a slick patch. She fell sideways toward the churning water. The rope went taut. Morrison felt the jerk. Time slowed. Their eyes met. He could let her fall. Accidents happen in training. Morrison pulled. He planted his feet, gritted his teeth, and hauled with everything he had. Emma scrambled back to safety. "Don't fall again," he growled, but something had shifted in his voice. Respect? They reached the patrol base exhausted. That night, during Emma's watch, Sergeant Reeves appeared. She spotted him at 50 yards. "Morrison saved me at the river," Emma told him. He had to make a choice based on reality, not assumptions. Reeves said. That changed everything. The next day brought a tactical exercise. Extract a package from a guarded structure. Emma suggested an approach route. Morrison studied her plan. That's actually good. They worked together for first time. Emma and Jessica provided overwatch while Morrison and Chin retrieved the package. When guards spotted them, Emma drew fire, sacrificing herself so the team could escape. At the rally point, Morrison's expression was complicated. You sacrifice yourself for the team. That evening, Chin apologized. I was wrong about you, Carson. You belong here. Morrison stared at his MR. I was wrong, too. His voice strained. My father served in Desert Storm. Came back with PTSD. When I was 12, he killed himself. I spent my childhood in his shadow. Then you arrived, Colonel Carson's daughter, and everyone talked about what a hero he was. I thought you were just riding his legacy, while people like me live with the consequences. Emma's throat tightened. I'm sorry. Your father's legacy is his, not yours. You've proven you're making your own path. He extended his hand. Fresh start. Fresh start. Jessica raised her water bottle. To Team Delta. Dysfunctional as hell, but we figured it out. Team Delta scored highest overall. Back at barracks, Emma studied her father's photo. She'd been trying to walk in his footsteps, but she wasn't her father. She was Emma Carson, forging her own path. The tattoo on her arm didn't chain her to his past. It connected her to it, but didn't define her. Morrison approached the next morning. I'm going to Ranger School. I realize what matters. Supporting your team, having their back. You saved me on that bridge, Emma said. It felt better than tearing you down. He extended his hand. I hope we're on the same team again. Emma felt completion. She'd learned real strength wasn't about being the toughest. It was about resilience, standing up after being knocked down, building bridges instead of walls. Colonel James Carson had been a legend, but Emma Carson was becoming something more. A soldier, a teammate, a leader in her own right. The tattoo marked her as her father's daughter, but the scars from Fort Benning marked her as herself. Emma Carson, Private United States Army, daughter of a legend, writing her own story. And that story was just beginning.